This meeting was meant to have taken place on the 21st of April, and if it had done so, it would have felt so different on the back of a great weekend at Swanwick, with a real sense of unity around a strong missional vision. God had been speaking to us through images of trees, plants, growth, extending the tent, and then COVID struck. So is all this now lost? Well, of course it isn't. God is faithful. He is at work. As one of the psalmists looks back over the challenges that Israel has faced in Psalm 77 verse 19, he says this: "Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters, yet your footprints were unseen." And very often that's the case. That's how it feels, doesn't it? God is leading us through the mighty waters. We don't see his footprints, and yet he is there and he is faithful. So I'd like to offer a few reflections on this season using the navigation buttons of a media player: rewind, pause, fast forward, stop and play. So first of all, rewind. Psalm 107 uses this refrain as it narrates different phases of the life of God's people. Let them thank the Lord for his faithfulness. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind. And he applies this to times when they were wandering through the desert, when they were in chains, when they were sick, when they were in stormy seas, when they were diminished and brought low through oppression, trouble and sorrow. All the time, let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind. And so today, it's really important that we rewind to remember that the year we celebrate tonight, 2019 to 2020, was not all COVID-19 and lockdown, and to thank God for his steadfast love. So here are just a few highlights that I'd like to suggest, and you could add your own, and we'll pause to give thanks to God. So first of all, with students. There were 30 students on our church weekend away, showing a real commitment to making St. Nick's their home. And we've seen a real change of culture amongst the students, a culture of welcome developing, especially spearheaded through the student team. And so students have been welcomed, really felt a great warmth in that welcome, and then invited their own friends. Student community has flourished, multiplying into 2 groups, with leaders for the next year being grown from within the groups. In international ministry, Globe Cafes continue to grow, and we've been in discussions recently with Friends International about St. Nick's taking more of a lead, more ownership of Globe Cafe going forward. The language school has reached countless people from different nationalities. Ministry to refugees and asylum seekers has grown and developed. And in children's ministry, there's been growth in both our youth groups. There's been Youth Alpha. Sparklers continue to grow throughout the year. And so we have a lot to thank God for his faithful love. The staff, of course, have been superb. We are very blessed to have such a highly talented and united staff. And I want to pay particular tribute to Laura, who sadly has had to stand down from her role in communications as she's gone to work for the diocese, but she's done a great job. So there's these words from Psalm 107: "Let those who are wise give heed to these things, and consider the steadfast love of the Lord." The second icon is pause. Of course, lockdown feels like one great big pause. We had to shift on to services online, and we paused all sorts of things. Student lunches, holiday club was postponed from last April, and Jane and I, like many others of you, have had to learn what it is to try and engage with online church with a toddler running around. It's not easy, and I want to just pay respect to all our parents who have engaged with church during this difficult time. And you may ask, are we in a permanent state of pause? Or could this be a giant leap into a new world? I'd like to suggest that this pause is actually a fast forward, a time of accelerated change. So fast forward. The pandemic has served to accelerate trends that were already beginning. Just think about the new behaviours of shopping online or working from home. They've begun, but they've accelerated so much during this time. There's been an acceleration in digitalisation. Who among us has not learned a new skill during this time, whether it's been to use Zoom or to log into services online or to communicate with people in different ways? Globalization has become increasingly apparent. We are one planet. We are one humanity. The planet feels quite small now. And there's been an acceleration in anxiety. We sense the vulnerability of our planet, the vulnerability of our species, the loss of the illusion that we're in control. And for many, this anxiety is compounded by isolation and loneliness and self-doubt. I myself have found that my moods have fluctuated more. I feel frustration, I feel stress, and I feel sadness, and no doubt you do too. People need connection and hope. There is more to life than avoiding death. Well, all these accelerated trends have impacted the church, and this means that aiming for a resumption of the old normal is not an option. The world, society, and the church have all moved on. And just as some things in society have not only continued to grow exponentially during this time, but so in church. And here are some of the trends that I see. First of all, church attachments have become looser. If you're going to go to church online, you can go anywhere. We've been saying for a long time that Jesus has only one church. Well, now we know. Similarly, Sunday attendance has already become less frequent. Well, now, if you are accessing church online, you needn't even do it on a Sunday. You can do it any time that suits you. There is, of course, a danger of accessing everywhere and belonging nowhere. And the change we have to adapt to is that the life of the church, the health of the church, cannot necessarily now be assessed by Sunday attendance. So this brings me on to my second point, that the small community has become more vital than ever. St. Nick's communities can now be seen for what they are, the basic units of church. Since the introduction of missional communities in 2010, a proportion of the church has been reluctant to get involved. Firstly, it was the name, missional communities, which was a bit off-putting. But then I think many people just got used to not connecting during the week. Well, now, if you're not part of a St. Nick's community, you are really missing out. And unless you have a really well-developed support structure for your spiritual life, you will suffer during this time. So join a community. I just want to pay tribute to our community leaders who are essentially leading little churches. I just encourage you to honour them, to support them. I know you do support them, but maybe you don't actually express that support. Do that. They need it during this time. The life of the church is in our communities. And when the church has gone through hard times historically, it's always been through the smaller communities that it has not only just survived, but also thrived. Just take China, for example. During the Cultural Revolution, religion of all sorts was savagely repressed in China. The church went underground, it met in small house churches. And when religious oppression was relaxed, the church emerged stronger and so much larger. And now China is on course to have the largest Christian population in the world. As well as communities, core groups have become not just an optional extra, but actually a real lifeline for so many of us. Groups are now meeting more frequently, and previously who weren't in core groups have joined them. So in the current context, the small community is more vital than ever, and I believe that will be the case going forward. And thirdly, presence online has changed from being optional to being essential. We've got a new website, but it's become obvious that our digital presence is absolutely vital for our outreach. People have joined St. Nick's through coming first of all online. The online alpha has been more successful than we imagined it would be. There have been new people when we started the 9:15 services who've arrived, having contacted the church online, and new Christians joining communities. We need to recognize that for many people, online is not the side door, but the front door through which they can engage with church and explore faith. One commentator has put it like this: churches will become digital organizations with physical locations. This is a big change. And so it's great that we've been able to appoint Sarah Tufnell to take on the role that Laura had in communications, and Daniel Bocchetti, one of our ordinands, is going to push forward in digital discipleship. Fourthly, the church is becoming more diverse. It's long been my conviction, as you know, that the church really should represent the diversity of our wonderful multicultural city. And this has been happening, but we've a long, long way to go. But during this time, the killing of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter campaign, it's all released a great deal of pain and accelerated the cause for racial justice. We are one human race. It is very painful to face up to hidden racism within ourselves and within our church. But going forward over these coming months, we must press into this further. This is a vital matter. Fifthly, new opportunities have presented themselves, particularly ministry to the refugees. So the Britannia Hotel just up the road houses hundreds of refugees. And our new refugee worker, Ellie, has been able to make contact with them, and a whole new area of ministry is opening up. The pandemic has highlighted inequality in our society. Some of us are able to carry on as normal, but others are devastated economically, relationally, and emotionally. It's been very heartening that the two appointments that we've made during this time, the communications role and the refugee worker, have corresponded directly to the two wide open doors that God has presented us with. Sixthly, discipleship begins at home. You know, the place for developing our children as Christian disciples has always been at home. It's never been enough to say, I disciple my children because I take them to church. But now this is really, really obvious. And Rich has done such a great job in resourcing families, now with the help of Vicky. And again, just let's pay tribute to our parents during this time as they take that role of discipleship, discipling their children yet more seriously. Finally, 79 Main Marion Way is now even more strategically important, because during this time, the owners of the Broadmarsh Centre have gone into liquidation, and the whole future of the Broadmarsh has been thrown up in the air. It's going to be the symbolic development site in our city, and our 79 Main Marion Way project is absolutely essential to that. Not just for us, but to all the people that we are reaching online. So I've just got a quick update from Martin Paradise and the 79 Main Marion Way team. We're at the stage of submitting detailed planning application, and we should hear from the planners on the 16th, or by the 16th of October, just a few days' time. There's a high degree of confidence in the plans that have been submitted, but they are subject to feedback and discussion with the planners. And the next two stages are very clear. First of all, a presentation of the plans to all interested parties, and secondly, fundraising. And the very sensible decision has been made that we won't go ahead with building until we have raised 75% of the funds. So a huge thanks to Martin and Priscilla and to the Main Marion Way team. Then to our next icon, stop. Some things have not just paused, but have stopped, or they need to stop. Everything we do and the way we do it has to be reassessed. So we need to be asking ourselves, are there things that happen in church activities that have had their day? We just need to stop them. It's a very strong human instinct to want to recover what was familiar, but you know, society around us has changed, and if we don't change, we'll be left behind. Remember this photograph that John McGinley showed us at Swanwick. I think it's called the Cholotica Bridge in Honduras, a great bridge built across the river, but where after the storms the river moved and the bridge was left isolated. We need to make sure that we don't end up in that position. So it is time to stop certain things, but it's always time to stop and to pray. And one of the things we need to leave behind is the busyness that so easily dominates our lives. So we just pause for prayer now. The final icon I want to talk about is play. I just want to leave you with 3 exhortations. Firstly, during this time, let's grow rather than vegetate. This applies to all aspects of our lives. I've been amazed at how people have seized the opportunity to learn new skills, to establish new life-giving rhythms and disciplines, and to reach out to others. But at the same time, there's a very strong instinct in all of us, and I feel it, to become passive, to become less disciplined and less intentional about how we live our lives. So during this time, we've got to take responsibility for our own lives. The idea that attending to my spiritual life means just turning up at church has been blown out of the water. Galatians 6 says this: if anyone thinks they are something when they're not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to other people. For each one should carry their own load. Each of us have to carry our own load. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. Let's grow rather than veg. This can be a period of prayer when we really grow in our prayer lives, but it doesn't happen by accident. We have to be intentional about it. I've been really humbled by hearing from Nikki Sudlow during this past week about Asalia, one of the pastors that we support in northern Burkina Faso. We bought a bundle of phones to give to these pastors, and this is what she writes. I'd like to give you an update on the phones that St. Nick's bought for the 3 groups of believers in the northeast of Burkina. The believers contact each other every morning, sharing news and prayer requests. Asalia records a short Bible message and sends it to them. His teaching has been greatly enriched as he has memorized the New Testament based on the audios. As Adama said, he learnt the Quran, so now he's learnt the New Testament. Isn't that humbling? We spoke about the increased digitalization. It dominates our lives, and we can spend our time flicking through Facebook posts or do what Asali has done. He has memorized the entire New Testament. Let's use this time to grow and not to veg. Secondly, let's reach out rather than close in. Again, the pressure during this time is to close in and shut the door. I'm sure that will increase as winter progresses. But you know, it really makes a difference to people when we do take the trouble to reach out, whether that's with a phone call, a virtual coffee, or a note through the door. Let's reach out to one another, and let's reach out to those around us. You know, there is a spiritual emptiness and a spiritual openness at this time. We have a unique window. All the things that used to give people a superficial sense of purpose, planning the next holiday, the next weekend away, these are things which have been taken away from them. And the emptiness is clear, and there is a spiritual hunger. Finally, let's reach out to students. It's such a hard time for the students coming to our city. They've come to the city and they're facing so many restrictions. They're wondering whether they should have come. They need friends. They need older friends that we can supply in this city. So have a chat to Emily if you want to do that. And thirdly, let's reach out rather than close in. Thirdly, let's be participants rather than observers. Join a community. Now is the time. If you have never joined a St. Nick's community, now is the time to do it. Or if you have an idea about starting a community, have a chat with me. Volunteer. There are so many ways in which you can be useful during this time. You may think it's not possible, but it is, particularly through our St. Nick's in the City projects. Andy Day is coordinating those. Make most of the teaching. You know, at Swanwick we committed to learning to tell our own stories with confidence, to engaging critically with the stories that our culture tells, and to really learning the big story of God in the Bible. And that's what we're engaged in now. So why not really go to town on this? Really engage with the teaching so that you have this overview, both through the Sunday sermons and also through the midweek engagement with James Halstead's material in our communities. And finally, let's be proactive. Let's just think about how we can just take that extra step. You know, if you watch the service online at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, just say hello. Even better, do what Graham Bowpitt does. He spent some time in prayer. He comes with a scripture to encourage us. He's proactive. And I thank you, Graham, for doing that. And we need to follow that great example. You know, I have no doubt that God is at work during this time. Personally, I'd much rather we didn't have to go through it. And I'm sure you would rather that too. But maybe it's something we have to go through for God to do what he wants to do in his sovereignty. There is a shaking going on, a testing, and it's hard. But let's press that rewind button. Look back and be grateful. Let's press pause. Let's recognize the time to stop. Let's fast forward. Let's recognize that we're in this time of great accelerated change and take stock of it. Let's stop and pray about it, and let's play. Let's take responsibility for ourselves and our own burdens, and let's help carry the burdens of others. So as the psalmist said, let those who are wise give heed to these things and consider the steadfast love of the Lord. Amen.